Was this the deal of a lifetime? Let's find out. Welcome back, Troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. So on eBay, a couple of months back, I saved this auction because I was curious how much it would end up selling for. It was listed as old vintage guitar, broken headstock, parts for repair, restore, Gibson, Sonex 180? Clearly, this shop located in Dayton, Ohio, that goes by Long A Burger Lady, does not specialize in electric guitars here. But it appears to be like maybe some sort of a pawn shop or something. You got a little bit of jewelry in the back. It's definitely a storefront. But when I first saw this from far away, I got a little bit excited. So let's just look through this real quick. We've got some sort of a TV yellow finish. We've got a pickguard on here that appears to have some sort of damage on it. The whole edge of the guitar appears to have been sanded down and or played quite a bit. We have some sort of plugged holes right here. It's a multi-pieced body. Pretty much everything is missing from this, including the toggle switch, our pickups. We have bushings within the body for the pickups, pots and knobs, all that stuff. And I'm sure a lot of people were looking at this thinking, is that what we think it is? Is that a 50s Gibson Les Paul special? I mean, it's got the color, and yeah, sure, it could have been modified a little bit, but let's keep looking at this to see if we can find anything else about it. Our output jack looks very strange. Like, the plate almost looks like it doesn't have a hole in it because it matches with the shadows, but no, that's fine. Okay, we're missing a couple of screws back here, but we got the plates, okay. And then we get our first shot here. Unfortunately, there is no headstock to this guitar, but we do get some inside cavity shots. We can see this. We've got our toggle switch cavity, and then we can see the damage here, which they were very nice to provide all of these photos with, because somebody who wants to restore this is going to want to know that their truss rod nut has been all mangled up. They're going to be able to need to replace that. And it's just good to know, what kind of wood are we going to have to make here in order to make it good? I mean, this has got an additional crack going down here. I mean, you can definitely cut some of that off and make it a little bit easier to do, but I am not a professional repair guy. But looking at this fretboard, that does not look like rosewood to me. That looks closer to ebony. So the seller thinks it's a Gibson. Okay, I think they're right with that, but why on earth did they put Sonex 180 in here? If you're not familiar, this is what a Sonex 180 looks like. It's a bolt-on Les Paul style guitar. It has a resin body core. They're not the best guitars, but for what they were built and designed to do, they do it well. I definitely like the higher end versions that use the Dirty Fingers pickups because they're a little bit nicer sounding to my ears anyways than the velvet bricks that the other models got. Up until a few years ago, these were pretty easy to buy in the $300 to $500 range with a case, even on the vintage market. And what's great is you can find these in a whole plethora of colors, but it was kind of like a Les Paul's take on Fender's territory, where it just uses a large pickguard right here. They can easily slap these things together. They use Japanese hardware on it as well. Not my favorite Gibsons ever made, but they did have a pretty cool logo to them, the Gibson Guitar Company. Or, in like some of these other episodes, you can find various different brandings on them, like Sonex by Gibson. Or check out one of the Sonex prototypes in this episode. Or check out the GGC 700, which is basically a set neck Sonex. So that's kind of its own unique guitar in that right. That also got the high-end Dirty Fingers pickups. So you look at this, and you look at this, and you go, nope, don't think so. So we can rule out Sonex 180. We can rule out that this is a vintage original one. And it's mainly because, look at this. You see how much of a shelf there is right here? That is not present on this guitar. So that puts us into like a later reissue style guitar. That little shelf is like 50% of the reason why you pay money to have like historic versions of these guitars. Because even though this guitar technically would look similar to this one, once it's all strung up and has the same parts, it's just not going to be the same. Other things to also keep note are the vintage specials and juniors. They're a little bit thicker than the USA counterparts. Obviously, again, depending on what era you're buying from. Another thing is the rosewood fretboard with the binding and the dot inlays. This guy does not have any binding at all. Now, it's possible it could have been removed, but it would still look vastly different than this. I think a lot of people were hoping that might have been what it was, and then even without the headstock, that would still be worth quite a bit of money because there's restorers out there that'll take these and do like conversion jobs, like Jim over at Jam City Guitars. We had just borrowed his 57 Custom not too long ago. He likes to take basket case juniors and specials and actually convert them over into bursts. If you guys are interested in checking one of those out, I guess I could ask him if he'd let us borrow one of those. So what do I think this most likely is? It's probably from within the Henry J era. So we're talking from 1986 all the way until 2019. In the 2000s and 2010s, they liked to play around with these quite a bit. They were a great bang for the buck. They had very similar looks to the vintage ones, but they were relatively affordable. Think similar to like the DC Tribute lineup of just a couple of years ago. They used to do those in Les Paul shapes. So if I had to guess, it's probably something similar to this. So this was birthed in 2011. It's got our stop bar tailpiece. It has a Nashville style bridge. It's got the black plastics. It does not have the shelf. There is no binding on here, and it is a true ebony fretboard. So our headstock would have originally looked something like this. Even though these are technically specials, I think they call them like junior specials. So this is likely one of those ones when they very confusingly named everything, like the special junior, the junior specials, the custom classics, and classic customs. And they named them this way because they were kind of blending the junior and the special together. Specials normally have the mother of pearl logos. They have the binding on the fretboard, but this one didn't. So it was like borrowing the junior's neck, but putting it on the special. But it just ended up confusing people so badly. And looking back historically, it also gets very confusing. But anyways, I think this is a pretty darn good contender as to what that would have been. So when we go over here, we can actually see somebody has sanded down the finish from a gloss down to more of like a satin, just stain, kind of aged it. They plugged the stop bar tailpiece holes here and then just converted it to a wraparound. And whenever you see these bushings within the body, the metal ones, that you're generally in the modern era. The vintage ones did not do that. Another way you could tell this wasn't a vintage original is just the shelf design compared to a 50s original one, and I mean, it doesn't look anywhere near the same. So thankfully, there were enough cues here that nobody spent more than they should have for this. As we can see here, I thought the bidding was gonna get a lot crazier than that. $400. I thought for sure somebody was gonna think that was a vintage original and bid like thousands. $400 for this, I mean, it's not that bad if you were looking for a legit Gibson as a project. It definitely needs some work, however, at the same time, it's got an interesting vibe. But good luck replacing that headstock, unless you have an actual Gibson veneer to put on it. It just never looks right ever again. So kind of a cool conundrum to scratch your head around. But while we're talking about things on eBay here, I thought we'd talk about a couple of counterfeits I've seen lately. So whenever you click on a guitar, occasionally you'll go down here to your suggesteds, and on eBay, it's just filled with these fakes. Now, a lot of them are unbranded. Like clearly, this is a ripoff of the George Harrison Rosewood Telecaster. It even has like a little maple stripe down here. Now, whether that's actually maple on this or just a painted artifact or something, I guess we won't know. But you know, for $190, you're just gonna get the guitar, and maybe it still says Fender on it, maybe it doesn't. It just kind of depends. But they shuffle these things on eBay a lot. Now, this particular one's coming from China, so even though it's $190, it's actually $290, almost $300. But like here is a Merle Haggard Tough Dog Telly, just called the Truff Dog TL. Gosh, these people. But what I wanted to illustrate is sometimes they are in the United States. But they've really been expanding on what they are making counterfeits of, or replicas for people who can't afford it. I mean, it makes sense to do artist signature models from an evil standpoint of business, but I wanted to applaud them for this. Okay. Nobody's done the Moderne with a Floyd Rose in it. I mean, technically the Modernes of Doom, but this is completely different. This is just like a regular one. And at first I thought this was just a white finish, but I don't know, it kind of looks like it might just be natural. It's either that or it's just a really poorly sprayed, but still, this just shocked me. And I was like, okay, that actually looks pretty interesting. Now, what's a little bit of a no-no here is, yeah, they're trying to copy the 80s serial number file. So B and then the number. So those were done in series from like A to, I think G is the latest I've ever seen. So that's a bit of a no-no. And if they've got that there, yeah, you can bet your butt that actually says Gibson, unfortunately. But yeah, counterfeit Moderne with a Floyd Rose, shipped from China, $276. But now it looks like they've got a regular one here, which those proportions are really bad. It looks like they've shrunken the instrument. And I don't like to talk about these because, you know, they don't have the right to produce these body shapes. But I like it when they do something a little bit more interesting. It's like right here, Gibson's not currently producing the RD. It's not quite popular enough. So, I mean, just put your own branding on it, take a slightly different take. I mean, I'm not going to be as against it. But by the fact that they don't show the headstocks on most of these, unfortunately, you know the true reality of these if you're buying them. But hey, no hate. That's what your budget allows you. Go for it. At the end of the day, guitars are meant to be played, although you might need to invest some setup work into those. It looks like they're knocking off widowed guitars here, so we get the red binding. Some pretty rough-looking plastics here. I'm sure once you take that off, it's not too bad. But this is what I'm talking about. These are brands where I'm a little bit less iffy about them because at least they changed the cutaway. They have a headstock that just straight up says Firefly. I've actually heard of these people before. They're not just completely copying, and it's not ever going to get sold as the real deal accidentally. Sure, it's heavily Gibson inspired, but at least it's different enough to do its own thing. 8-year-old kids that want to have a cool looking guitar probably shouldn't have a real widowed Les Paul that's $5,000. But look at this. This is what I was talking about when they're starting to recreate crazy things. I have never ever seen a counterfeit reverse flying V. But here we go, $365. Some Mel 99 Music in China has done it. And I applaud them because Gibson doesn't make these things anymore. But that also brings up the fact, flying Vs and Explorers are easier to get away with because Les Pauls have a very certain shape to them. But Vs, especially one that, not everybody has the reverse flying V melted into their brain. I could see this potentially tripping someone up. This is when you look at like the output jack style, that's definitely import, but somebody could replace it, make it better. But you could also look at the bridge. Again, you could say it's either a Tone Pros or somebody has replaced it. I mean, if somebody put real Gibson parts in here, I'm scared. What does the headstock look like on this particular one? I mean, you might be able to tell that, this is terribly crooked, but again, it's not a model you see every day. So be careful with your reverse flying Vs that you buy out there. I especially like it when the brands are like full of themselves. Naughty boy, TL. I thought TL was supposed to mean Telecaster. I just thought it was interesting to see them reissue some strange shapes. All right, Troglodytes, I hope you enjoyed tonight's mystery episode. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we will catch you tomorrow on the next one. Take care.